The Chiefs were fresh off winning Super Bowl 57 last year versus the Philadelphia Eagles, and they were a preseason favorite very early once it was over to make it back to back. Something that hadn't been done since the 2003-2004 New England Patriots. And, well, they tried before in that pandemic 2020 season, but unfortunately, they were thumped by Tom Brady and the Bucs in Super Bowl 55 in 2021. So, the Chiefs, to begin that quest, aside from a few additions and subtractions through free agency and the draft, they were still content with running it back with largely the same group to begin their quest to repeat as champions in this past season. So the Chiefs, actually, it wasn't quite as easy as they hoped it'd be because they lost to the Lions in the season opener and things were kind of shaky internally with this team because, sure, they won a lot of games throughout the year, but there were some issues. There were some issues with this team, especially on the offensive side of the ball, because, well, they were dropping the ball, and I don't mean that like in one way or another. I'm talking about like literally, they were literally dropping the ball, and who was literally dropping the ball? Well, it was their receivers. Most of their receiving core was literally dropping the ball. So I was kind of an issue with this Chiefs team before the season started. Like one of my key things that I was looking at this Chiefs squad, and that was the receiving core. They didn't really add any help for Mahomes outside of drafting Rashee Rice. In fact, they lost McCole Hardman and Juju Schuster to free agency. And I noted this in, like I said, my season preview for Kansas City, that they got by last year, like the 2022 season, by the way, but that they got by with second tier, third tier receivers on their way to the Super Bowl and winning the Super Bowl. But this past season, it might not work again. And for much of this past season, it didn't really work for the most part because, well, receivers were dropping the ball left and right. And they really didn't make a lot of very catchable balls on must-cut first downs, costing teams possessions, forcing the team to punt, and sometimes it even cost them games, like very valuable games. Like, for example, the Eagles game in Week 11, that deep ball from Mahomes to Marcus Valdes-Scantling, like a very catchable ball, but no, he dropped it. And then the game to the potential touchdown from Mahomes to, I'm not sure who it was in that Week 13 game against the Packers, like very catchable ball, but dropped it. And yeah, it was pretty rough. It is a pretty rough go for most of the season for the receiving core of the Packers. And then you have the pass protection for this Chiefs team. The offensive line, wildly inconsistent throughout the year. And that mainly stems from their tackles that they signed to replace Orlando Brown Jr. and Andrew Wiley, who were free agents last year. So they signed on Jawan Taylor and Donovan Smith to replace them. And yeah, it was a very rough go. And I get it. Mahomes is a great quarterback and all, but he cannot undo the crimes that his tackles got arrested for, like holding. They were holding a lot. And every time that Mahomes and the receiving, and at least the receiving work, got some pretty good plays in, they were called back because their tackles would not stop getting arrested from holding. So overall, I mean, like this offense, like it was getting by, but they were holding themselves back. And one of the only things keeping them in games and helping them win was their defense, and obviously Patrick Mahomes, of course. But the defense was one of the two strengths of this team. In a reverse of years past, where the defense was really bad, defense coordinator Steve Spagnuolo coached together a unit that went from one of the worst in the league to one of the best in the league, because this defense only allowed 20 or less points per game on most occasions. So this defense was actually really good, a top 5 defense in the NFL. And one of the key reasons why the Chiefs went on to have such a successful playoff run again was the emergence of one Rashee Rice as a key receiving option. Now, obviously, you have Travis Kelce one of, if not the top tight end in the NFL. Actually, it shouldn't be disputed anymore that he is the top tight end. But nonetheless, he, even in a down year, he was this unstoppable force. And then you have second-year running back Isaiah Pacheco, another productive option in the rushing and receiving game. But when Mahomes needed a true downfield threat late in the season, they finally found one in Rashee Rice, who is pivotal in the Chiefs' 3 playoff games, especially on the road. And speaking of the playoffs, they fixed all their problems on offense. Like it was a flip in the switch. The Chiefs' issues, like with dropping the ball, pass protection, like we were questioning that a lot. Whether it was going to lead to the Chiefs like falling down in the playoffs, possibly as soon as their first ever road playoff game in Buffalo. But that didn't happen. They cleaned up the drops. They cleaned up the pass protection en route to another Super Bowl appearance. So they went on the road against Buffalo. They went on the road against the Baltimore Ravens. So everyone pretty much, including me, that was doubting the Chiefs, we were all eating crow. We were all eating that dog dookie water. Once it was all said and done, as they made it back to the Super Bowl to face the San Francisco 49ers. And they did struggle to some degree in that game. And they made it a fight in that game. And it went to extras. They made it to an extra period in overtime. And, well, even if it took that extra period, and even though the Chiefs went on to slowly and surely dissect my team, the Chiefs accomplished what they couldn't do in 2021, while also breaking my heart as well. And that was become the first back-to-back Super Bowl champions since those Patriots in 2003 and 2004. They beat my 49ers and become repeat Super Bowl champions. So they finished their story, or at least continue it. And of course, who couldn't forget all the Swifties that joined them along the way? Oh yeah, how could I forget? Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. Their love story that started in week 3 and went on to become mainstream throughout the year. The main story in the NFL throughout the year. How could I forget that? But anyway, the Chiefs, congrats to them. Everyone doubted them. Everyone was hating on them, but they continue to prove why they're the king of kings in the National Football League, whether you like it or not. They continue to prove you wrong. They continue to show them what they can do, even if they don't have many options in certain positions. So now they're going to try to go for something that has never been accomplished in the National Football League, and that is a three-peat. 3 straight times to win a Super Bowl. So how are they going to get there? Well, they have to address some things in the offseason. So looking at their offseason so far, they have around $9 million in cap space before the free agency period started. They're picking last in the NFL draft, at least in the first round, as custom when you're the Super Bowl champion. So looking at some of the key free agents, obviously we're not going to be able to retain them all because of the little cap space that they had before the new league year started. Like for example, defensive tackle Chris Jones, guard Nick Allegretti, who signed with the Washington Commanders, safety Mike Edwards, who went to the Bills, Willie Gay, one of their key linebackers, went to the Saints, Donovan Smith, one of the problematic tackles, he remains unsigned. Tommy Townsend, one of their big punters, went with the Texans, and the running backs Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jerick McKinnon, their backups, they remain unsigned. So Chris Jones, they initially franchise tagged him, but they went on to give him a big fat contract. They also re-signed linebacker Drew Tranquill. In an interesting signing, Matt Ariza, who was blacklisted from the league initially, but they later unblacklisted him after some allegations that got him kicked out of the league. And then they went on to sign Cardinals receiver Marquise Hollywood Brown. So Patrick Mahomes finally gets that second option outside of Rashee Rice. I mean, let's see if it works out or not. Actually, they didn't place the franchise tag on Chris Jones. They actually franchise tagged corner L'Jarius Sneed, their top corner. But they traded him away to the Tennessee Titans in return for a 7th-round pick swap and then next year's 3rd-round pick. So a glaring need that they need to address this offseason if they want to keep that secondary as good as it was this year. So going on to the needs that they need to address for the rest of this offseason, it is that secondary. Finding a new top corner or two because, trading Jerry Sneed seems kind of crazy. I get it. They didn't have a lot of money to spend. They had to commit to someone, and that someone was Chris Jones. But they got to scout hard to find a new top corner to go opposite Trent McDuffie because that secondary is going to struggle if they don't have anyone in that other slot. And then on the offensive side of the ball, at offensive line, try again at tackle. The exterior offensive line protection was very, very average. Actually, not even average. It was not good. It was not good for Mahomes. And the Chiefs did right by not retaining Donovan Smith. So the Chiefs need to use this draft to probably find a gem at right tackle. And last but not least, add some quality depth at receiver. This is going to be an ongoing theme for Kansas City until the Chiefs staff actually address getting Mahomes some actual weapons outside of Kelsey, Pacheco, Marquise Brown, and Rashee Rice. So I get it. They've already released someone like Marcus Valdes-Scantling, but you can't go into this season under their title defense expecting to get by with an on and off again receiving core. It's no, actually get Patrick Mahomes some help. Just commit, address the receiving core, and if you want to actually go for a three-peat, get the man some help. So to cap things off, the Chiefs proved once again in 2023 that even if they had a down year of sorts in their title defense, even if the regular season was not what they were expecting, well, it didn't matter in the end. The playoffs were the real season for them because they flipped the switch and they proved once again they are the NFL's king of kings. They will break your hearts and they'll be swift about it. They will for sure address the remaining pressing needs this offseason as much as they can. And as we learned this year, don't doubt Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. They have a really good chance to make even more history this coming year, and that is trying to become the first ever repeat Super Bowl champion in NFL history.